Here's an interesting interview from The Verge where they sat down and talked with the head of HBO Max. So he's the CEO of AT&T's Otter Media Division, the group responsible for HBO Max. So he's basically kind of in charge, maybe not so directly on what gets made, right? But I'm sure his voice had a lot of weight when it came to saying, hey, why don't we make that Snyder Cut happen? Now, what I like about this, and I'm going to go to it because there's a lot of stuff that really I don't need to talk about, like HBO Max getting 4K HDR and their problems with Roku and other stuff. That's for another video. What I want to talk about here is what they had to say in response when it came to fandom. That's what I really liked about this interview, and that's what I want to talk about because I think there's some pretty interesting stuff in here that the guy says that companies could honestly learn from. So we're going to go down here to this part of the interview where they start talking about Roku and some Snyder Cut stuff. This is where it starts. So they're asking them, are you going to cave basically and give fans what they want? It's a little bit of content because we're kind of jumping into the middle of the interview here. So I'm going to read the question. It might not make total sense, but I need to read this one before I can get to the next one. So the interviewer says, that's a typo right there. Are you going to just hold out until the Snyder Cut hits and then an army of DC fans are like, I want this on my Roku? And they have to cave because that's what happened with Fox and the Super Bowl. At some point, Fox had to just cave and give Roku subscribers the Super Bowl. Are you saying eventually that the demand is going to be so high that Roku is just going to have to cave? Now, what the interview is asking there, so they're still trying to get HBO Max for Roku and a few other streaming apps that are out there. And I'm sure it's going to come eventually, but they're having a little bit of negotiation problems when it comes to, I think, their cut, Roku's cut. And I think that's where the problem is. So for now, Roku people only have HBO Now. And this starts to make a little bit more sense now to why they're doing these descriptions onto why the differences between the products are, because I did a video talking about the confusion between HBO Go, Now, and Max. Honestly, I still think the criticism holds. They should have waited till everybody was in line before they gave this a solid release date. It wouldn't have hurt them, in my opinion, to wait a month or two, but they wanted to push the brand out. Now, will this cause more confusion with people at the end of the day? Like, is this going to damage the brand long term? I think is the important question to ask here. But anyway, let's go on. Here's the answer to that question. I don't know if caving is actually the way to think about it. I think the consumer wins at the end of the day, and I think we've put together a product offering that has multiple Snyder Cuts. And then cuts them off by a laugh here. Is that a positive or a negative that there's multiple Snyder Cuts? He responds, the reference to the Snyder Cut is that it's a passionate fandom. There's a passionate fandom around Friends. There's a passionate fandom around Harry Potter. There's a passionate fandom around, you name it on that platform, the DC Library. There's a passionate fandom about Crunchyroll. There's a passionate fandom around Studio Ghibli. I don't know about Crunchyroll so much, but I definitely agree Studio Ghibli was a big win for them. Studio Ghibli is huge, and the only place you can legally watch it on a streaming platform is HBO Max. It's actually just as big of a win for them as the Snyder Cut in a lot of ways. That's a huge audience. But anyway, goes on to respond. One thing that I liked about this too that I want to say real quick is the passionate fandom stuff. I like the wording used here. Now, the media hates this, and this is one of the reasons they don't like the Snyder Cut, is because fandom got to win. Now, these sites like The Verge, they're supposed to speak for fandom. They're supposed to be the middleman. Social media has effectively cut out the middleman. And that's one of the reasons they don't like stuff like the Snyder Cut. Make no mistake, that's why they don't like it. They don't like you either, to be honest. There is a difference, though, between the fandom around the Snyder Cut, which has targeted a lot of directors who have worked with Warner Brothers and has targeted groups on Twitter. Now, this is the interviewer right here, by the way. And although there's positives about that fandom, there are a lot of overwhelming negatives, which many smart critics have written about. See what they're saying here? You toxic Snyder Cut people, you. There's a difference between that fandom and a Friends or a Harry Potter fandom, which hasn't necessarily gone out of their way for years to demand certain things in the kind of way that the Snyder Cut fandom has. And I wonder if you worry about the precedent that you've set, because right after that came out, they started saying, are we going to get the Ayer cut for Suicide Squad? A David Ayer cut? And I generally wonder if that was something that Warner Media took into consideration, that they've set a new standard. So he responds saying, look, definitely not a precedent. And you're right. There are different types of fandom. There's the fandom you just described, and there's other fandoms. My reference to the fandoms is the fact that we're in a space where consumers are loud, consumers guide, and we absolutely have to listen as industry. I had a boss that once said, industry and consumers aren't always aligned, but consumers do tend to win. It's a fine balance, and I think when it comes to video, when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to content, consumers have never had more choice, and they've never had more of a voice. That doesn't mean that we will go out and invest our dollars in every single fandom that exists. I think that's a fair thing to say. But what he's also saying is if there's enough demand and enough passion, we will invest our dollars in it because we want to make money. We will listen to you. I like that wording. Hey, we're not going to make, we understand if there's a small little audience here. Maybe it's not a lot of demand. We're listening, but we're not going to invest in it. Okay? If there's a big enough demand, like the Snyder Cut had, we will listen because we want to make money and consumers get what they want. I like hearing that. That's the kind of stuff I like to hear as a fan, as a member of fandom. I like hearing that, hey, I'm going to listen to you. I might not go through with it, but I'm at least listening, and I'm not going to call you a piece of garbage. I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to take down what you have to say. I may not go through with it, but I at least listened, and you're not a piece of trash. Is it so hard not to want to be called? Is it so hard to ask that you don't call me garbage? That's what this interviewer wants him to say. Make no mistake. They want him to say, those people are garbage. Hinted at it right here when he started talking about negatives in fandom. Where do you think that conversation usually goes most of the time? But it continues on. But I think the reference to the Snyder Cut and the Friends fandom is the fact that consumers are speaking and we have to listen. Great stuff right there. This reminds me a lot of when they tried to get Henry Cavill to say fans are trash. And remember, he came out and said, because the interviewer was like, excuse me, but what do you think about toxic fandom, Mr. Cavill? Expecting him to just double down and trash consumers and fans. And he said, I think, they're just passionate fans. I love passionate fandom. He's kind of doing the same thing here, but a little bit more politically driven in his wording. And I got to say, I like it. I like it when companies do this, because this is what they should be doing. And isn't it sad that we have to praise good customer service? That the standard for so long has been spitting on consumers, spit on your consumer, and you're supposed to like it. It's disgusting. So I like seeing this. It makes me glad that I signed up for HBO Max, even though I think it needs a little bit more work. But I like the messaging here. This is how you win people over, is stuff like this. So it doesn't mean we're going to redo every movie ever made, but I think that we definitely have our ear to the ground. And I think we do. So I like that. They're listening. He's saying we're listening to you. Okay? You're on social media. We're listening to you. And they are listening. I see them responding to everybody right now. And it's great to watch. AT&T is doing all kinds of crazy fun stuff. So I just go back and look at the buzz that we got off of the Harry Potter library yesterday. It was a wonderful surprise and delight. It's because consumers are passionate about these franchises. Great stuff there. I think that there's a lot of stuff to like in that response. The rest of the interview just goes on to talk about what's coming to HBO Max and that they're going to get, 4K and HDR and all that stuff. I was more interested in the responses to the fandom questions. And I think a lot of you out there that follow me definitely appreciate stuff like that. So this is good responses here. And I'm interested in seeing what happens with the rest of the HBO catalog here. So anyway, let's move on. Some good news for a lot of you out there. Marvel is getting the Daredevil rights back in about 6 months. what's going on there. Netflix has the rights, unfortunately, to a lot of characters that a lot of people I think would like to see in Marvel movies, like Daredevil. Despite what you might feel about the rest of the Netflix shows, I think Daredevil was pretty good. So I would like to see them bring everybody back and continue on with that show. I don't know if they'll be able to do that. I think his name is Charlie Cox, the guy who played Daredevil, wants to keep doing stuff. So this could turn into a Snyder Cut situation. Maybe if people are loud enough, maybe they'll listen. I don't know. Disney is kind of in a weird place right now. We'll see if that actually happens, but I wanted to talk about this because I actually liked the Netflix Daredevil show. I didn't care about the other shows very much, but this show was actually generally pretty good. So if they could actually get Charlie back and maybe continue on with just this show, I would like that. We'll see what happens. Maybe get him in the movies, stuff like that. You definitely wouldn't have to do an origin because it already exists. So you could just start doing stories again, which would be pretty cool. We'll see what happens. But anyway, that's all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts on this. What do you feel about the HBO stuff? What do you feel about Daredevil? I want to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you would, throw a like up. Make sure you're still subscribed. Remember those comments, very important. Also, make sure you're still subscribed. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that notification bell. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace. Also, if you want to help support the channel, check out my Teespring store. There's a link in the description. You can find some merchandise in there that you might want to check out.